for years, my go-to pose when I come to a yoga practice is downward facing dog. And I'll do several variations of that. And mostly I have no idea what the practice will evolve into. Sometimes it's just downward facing dog. Maybe you have this way of practicing as well. In this practice, we'll just look at a variety of ways to practice using downward facing dog. We'll start in downward facing dog. As you begin in downward facing dog, just see if you've got the right length, the right distance between your hands and your feet. Come to a plank position, lower yourself down. Take your hands right alongside your ribs. With your toes tucked under, lift yourself up, come back to downward facing dog. It may feel just a little strange because sometimes we like doing a shorter dog to walk in so that we can feel our heels touch the mat. But if you try this longer downward facing dog, but if you customize your downward facing dog, you'll feel like you can get just a little bit more strength in the arms, in the legs. If you pedal your right leg, begin to walk your dog, bend your right knee, straighten your right leg, bend your left. It's a wonderful way to start your practice. And if you can't think of poses that you'd really love to do in your practice, sometimes they just evolve naturally as you just work with the breath, the alignment, and the muscular action of the arms and the legs. Now come to a place of stillness. Come up to tiptoe position in your downward facing dog. Move your heels over to the right so you get a nice stretch to the left side ribs. Lift your heels up to come to tiptoes again and draw your heels to the opposite side. Lift the right ribs high, just expand really nicely. Lift your heels up. Come down to a kneeling position, and we'll come to puppy dog pose, just to give our hands a rest here. Reach your hands another handprint taller. Allow your head to release. You still get a nice lifting quality of your armpits. As you draw yourself into this more resting version of downward facing dog, if you want to come all the way to child's pose by bringing your pelvis back to your heels, by all means. Just allow yourself to find fullness in the breath and just feel how that fullness fills the back body so nicely. As you're rested, lift yourself back up to come to downward facing dog again. As you lift up to downward facing dog, lift your right leg in the air, bend your right knee, and get a nice quad stretch here. Spread the toes so you keep the engagement of the leg. Release your right foot down to the mat. Inhale, lift your left leg up, bend your left knee, and see if you can lift the hip even higher. Release your left foot down. Now walk your feet a little bit closer to your hands, what I call the short dog, as you have just a little bit less distance between your hands and your feet. It allows you to get a nice twisting action as you take your right hand off the mat to the left outer shin. Bend your right elbow. You might want to even bend your right knee so that you can just get a little bit more rootedness through the left heel. Release your right hand. Come to take the left hand somewhere to the outer shin or outer ankle and bend your left elbow. Again, to give a little bit more attention to the right leg, a slight bend to the left knee. might allow you to root down very firmly from the pelvis all the way to the heel. You feel a nice elongation. Now release your heel, take your hands back, come back to downward facing dog, and come to a plank position to lower yourself all the way to the mat. On the mat, interlace your fingers and press your forearms down. Have your elbows slightly narrower than your shoulders are. With your toes tucked under, lift up to come to a forearm position. So this version of downward facing dog, often called dolphin pose, has your forearms pressing down, tuck your toes under, lift your pelvis up. You can walk in slightly and just notice the closer your feet get to your interlaced fingers, the more weight your forearms are bearing. It takes a lot of strength. In this position, you can take your right leg up again and do that same action that we did. Just bend your right knee. Release your right foot down. Take your left leg up, lift high, bend your left knee for a nice stretch to the top of the thigh. Release your left foot down. Walk your feet back so you come to a plank position and lower your knees to the mat. We did a short stance variation with our hands closer to our feet. Now we're going to do a wide leg stance with fingers forward to really extend out through the side body. So this is also a form of prasarita padottanasana, a nice variation, but it looks like a wide stance downward facing dog. As you inch your fingers forward, to get length through the side body, walk your hands over to the left side. You might even want to take your right hand to the outside of the left leg to just encourage a little bit more length to the right side ribs. Take your hands back to the center position. Hands nice and wide apart, wider than shoulder width apart. Walk your hands over to the opposite side. As you go to the right side, take your left hand to the outer right shin. Pull in with the left hand. Reach your elbow down as you inch your right fingers just a little bit further to the side. Invite your breath to just expand through the side body. And now come back to the center position with your knees slightly bent. Reach your pelvis back, inch your fingers forward, and release your head and neck. Just nod it yes and shake it no as a way to just release the muscles that support your neck. Now come to all fours position. In all fours position, we'll make our way to yet another variation. Step your hands one step higher, tuck your toes under, lift your pelvis up. As you come to downward facing dog, bend your right knee, draw it in, and park your right ankle to the outer left knee as you draw your left heel down. Reach your right knee away from your right ribs. Keep your right toes very active. Release your right foot to the mat. Draw your left knee up toward your heart. Take your left knee away from your ribs as you expand nicely in the pose. You draw from the pelvis down to the heel to get just a nice stretch through the back side of the leg. Release your left foot down. For some of us, the back side of the leg really feels so great with a nice stretch. So one way to get a little bit more stretch is to hook your right toes behind your left heel. Take your right big toe to the outside of the left heel, the second toe to the inside, and just press down to get lots of length there in the back side of the leg. Release your right foot to the mat. Do the same with the left foot as you take the big toe to the outer heel, the next toe to the inner heel. Press down. Just get that extra help with your left foot to reach down to get this nice length to the back side of the leg. Release your left foot. You perhaps heard and practiced Wild Thing, where one leg is lifted, you bend the knee to get a nice quad stretch, and you land on the opposite side. And you take yourself into a nice back bending pose. So you get a nice forward bend in downward facing dog and a nice back bend. Let's come to downward facing dog again. Place your hands, lift your pelvis high, lift your right leg up, bend your right knee, reach your right foot off to the left side of the mat, and enjoy a nice stretch, this fullness. Release your hand back to the mat to come to downward facing dog. Take your left leg up. I'll want to avoid the curtain, so as I bend the left knee, I just look to make sure I've got plenty of room to land my left foot as I reach my left arm over the head. And now slowly you can make your way back to downward facing dog and come to lie on your back. Even in a short practice where you're just playing around with downward facing dog, give yourself some time to just assimilate what you've done. Lie on your back. Take your attention to your breath. Allow your pelvis to feel so heavy. Let that heaviness just allow your legs to relax completely. And in the same way, as you take the heads of your arm bones back and lift your heart, allow your arms to rest easy. Allow your facial muscles to soften. Have a nice ease to your breath. Breathe very freely and naturally. Allow the inflow and the outflow of the breath to create the sense of ease. And a sense of rejuvenation. Enjoy this time to rest. Namaste.